Hey, quick introduction as to what you're about to watch. Recently, I hosted a panel discussion with three very smart people, and they are James Fuller, CEO and founder of Hnry, Natalie Ferguson from Hatch Invest, and Tom Hartmann from the Commission for Financial Capability. We caught up with a room full of people and we discussed the problems that self-employed freelance contractors have in terms of financial exclusion and how to solve these problems. So without further ado, let's get started. Hope you enjoy.
If you're an independent earner, if you're self-employed, if you're a contractor, if you're thinking of becoming one, then this is really, really important. I'm quite passionate about people not being excluded from, investing in financial markets. So Hatch, Hnry, Tom from the Commission for Financial Capability. Did I get it right?
Yep.
Cool. These are some really, really smart people, and feel free to ask questions. Now, before we introduce them, Slido, SLI.do. If you have your cell phones, pull it up, go to a web browser, put in SLI.do, and it'll pull up a page. Slido, not dildo, Slido, very important distinction. Put in the hashtag investing. Feel free to ask anything, honestly, anything. Why does it hurt when I pee? Anything like that. And I'll do my best to find out who's the best person to answer that question. That guy's not laughing. Maybe it's too close to home. So yeah, pull it out. Feel free. You're not rude by looking at your phones. I'm going to pull it up on my phone shortly. But now on my left we have James Fuller. Welcome, James. Should we give James a hand? James. Yeah. This is just for you, James. That's not true. So James Fuller. I'm going to read this just because I don't want to get this wrong. James Fuller is the co-founder and CEO of Hnry with no E, Hnry. An all-in-one service. Sorry, I had to say that. All-in-one service that takes care of all the financial admin for contractors, freelancers, and the self-employed, allowing them to focus on getting the job done rather than worrying about tax and compliance. So, the Marie Kondo of sorting your crap out in your bank account, right? Good stuff. It's good stuff. So that's James. All right. Now next we have Natalie. Give her a hand, everybody. Just because we did it for James, we have to do it for Natalie. Would you call yourself a renegade, a rebel? What would you call yourself, Natalie?
All of the above.
All of the above? Not yet. So, Natalie, Hatch Invest, part of Kiwi Wealth, digital investment platform allowing easy, accessible, affordable way of investing in the U.S. share market, fractionally or otherwise. It's good stuff as well. What can I tell you guys about Natalie apart from it's Natalie? Yeah? That'll do? Cool. Last but not least, we have Tom Hartmann from the, clap for Tom. So Tom is the managing editor of the Commission for Financial Capability. And by the way, I've had all these guys on the NZ Everyday Investor podcast. The only one that hasn't been released is Tom's yet, but really good stuff. If you want to learn more about what they do, just check out those episodes where these guys are featured on it. But Tom is from New York. Did you know?
You could just say I'm from Sorted, actually.
You're from Sorted. Forget that.
Cool.
I want to get to like a really burning question, which is hot dog in a bun or on a stick?
Hot dog.
Yeah, I knew you weren't gonna like that. But being American, I was just trying to test how Kiwi you really were. Yeah. Okay. Sausage sizzle. Okay, so let's.
Better.
Much better. So we're going to go through a quick fire questions, but before we do, we're just going to do a round with each one, and I want each of you just to tell me something about what you're passionate about at the moment to do with your work and just in general. James?
The thing that I'm really passionate about is making sure that those people who are contractors, self-employed, what we would kind of call independent earner, making sure that independent earners are not disadvantaged when it comes to comparisons to people who are in permanent employment. So Tom and I have talked at length about this, and we've actually done some work out in the media about promoting some better incentives for self-employed people when it comes to investing in their future in the kind of way that is reflected with permanent staff. Because the big thing for me is not everyone who's a contractor is running a small business, and actually some of us are contractors not by our own choice. So a big thing for me is the equality of people who are independent earners.
Cool. And you touched on that theme. It's kind of like financial exclusion. You don't want to be on the out and missing out from the action just because you're self-employed, right? So it's good. Now, Tom, I'm just going to skip you, Natalie. I'll come back to you in a second. Sorry, Natalie, I haven't forgotten about you. But in terms of one of the key things that everyone's really involved in is education and empowerment. So the Commission for Financial Capability, Sorted, tell us how that can help people like this do better.
Yeah, so hopefully you're a little bit familiar with Sorted, which I think is one of the best uses of a brand to reach people by any government here. Many people don't know that it's put out by the Commission for Financial Capability, which is the office of the Retirement Commissioner. So if you're trying to think about people getting ready for that long holiday at the end of your career that we call retirement, you have to start way early, and of course that brings us into that financial capability space. And I'm really keen these days to expand a lot of our work and make it sort of logically make sense for people who are self-employed, for contractors. In my own career personally, I've been a contractor at different times in my life, and particularly even for CFFC, I went from being an employee to a contractor to an employee, and saw actually my behaviors, especially with KiwiSaver, change. The way I viewed KiwiSaver and its value to me, changed radically. So really passionate these days about trying to figure out ways so KiwiSaver can work for all of us, not just mostly for employees.
That's good. Yeah, Natalie, tell us what you're into at the moment. Go for it.
Well, I suppose we're about a year and 1 month post-launch, and one of the things that we found really interesting in the last year is that not just the people we thought would sign up to Hatch signed up to Hatch, and there are a bunch of people, and like same with Darcy, that are generally more excluded from some of the financial tools and investing tools. And at the moment, about 18% of our most engaged hatchlings are self-employed people, so that's one of the groups that we want to really look at, and hence why tonight's happening, to figure out ways to make investing and wealth building and the relationship with Hnry a lot easier, so that we can kind of get out of your way and let you guys do what you do best.
Cool, awesome. Now I've got a question here already. This is good. Keep them coming, guys. This is better than I thought. Slido, this is really cool. So,
low expectation.
Right, really low expectation. No, just kidding. So this is kind of like a two-part question, I guess, and I'm gonna maybe suggest, you can all interject if you want here, but I'm gonna suggest maybe Tom and Natalie have a crack at this one. So, hi team, if we have an emergency fund that we want good returns on, but also good liquidity, what would you recommend? So it kind of speaks, I guess, to that whole, why have an emergency fund, and also how to do that emergency fund, which gives a little bit better return than just an online savings account.
Yeah, on this one I have to advocate the online savings account, because it has to be liquid. But I think that an emergency fund, and we talk about a starter safety net of even $1,000. Just sock it away, sell whatever's around the house, just to have $1,000 separate. If it's with a separate institution, or if it's at least a separate account in the same bank that you have, that separateness actually helps. So it's always on call, but a little bit out of sight, a little bit out of mind, so you can't rate it at moment's notice.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else want anything to add on that one?
I'll chip in. I was actually speaking to someone earlier. We were talking about exactly this concept, and what they've done, which I thought was great. If you're going to go down the route of having the savings account, actually go to the bank and make sure you can only transact out of that account through the branch. So not online, not part of your internet banking. Force yourself to physically go to a branch to withdraw money. And the guy I was talking to was saying, well, actually what he's found is that he's tried to raid that account for impulse purchases, but the thought of going to a bank branch this day and age, waiting in line to transfer money out, and he realized, actually, I don't want that thing that much. So he's actually maintaining his old emergency fund just by not wanting to go into a bank. So I would thoroughly recommend that.
Yeah, a little bit of friction is actually good sometimes, yeah. Tom, on the Sorted website, there's I read something recently, and it was like, I don't know how many steps there were, like 5 steps to something or other.
6 steps.
Six steps. Do you want to just really quickly?
Yeah, just really quickly. So we would have, and maybe you've had this happen to you. Somebody will come not being very happy about their finances and say, I'm not really happy how it's going with my money. Just tell me what to do. The mind looks for shortcuts. It's saying, look, I don't want to think about what to do. So, what would you do first? What would you? And so we came up with these 6 steps, and it happens to be that starting a safety net is the first one. Dialing up your KiwiSaver settings is the second one. Tackling your debt, the third. Then fourth, cover your people, your money, your stuff. That insurance area is really complex, and people have a hard time understanding what to prioritize and where to start. And then fourth is run your long-term numbers, run your retirement numbers. Just take a long-term view for a little bit. And the last one, 6th, is set your targets and then set yourself up to hit them.
Cool.
All about goal setting.
Well summed up. That's good. It took me a long time to figure out maybe I should actually do KiwiSaver. And by the way, anybody in this room, if you don't have KiwiSaver, do it. But beyond just doing the minimum, and there's pros and cons for doing more than just the minimum with KiwiSaver, and there's lots of different opinions on this. I guess that's where it probably comes into what are our options, right? So Hatch being a really easy, affordable, accessible way to enter the U.S. share market. Natalie, do you just want to speak to how one could actually do, let's say they have KiwiSaver sorted out and they want to do something else. How easy is it to do something on Hatch?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting listening to what you were saying about those 6 steps, Tom. And I was having a conversation with Cole earlier, I always refer to Cole, about the importance of setting up good habits even before you necessarily have the weight of money behind you to implement them in a serious way. So I would suggest alongside those 6 habits is start putting into place some good investing habits, which might be a small amount of money regularly. So you just start to learn by doing while you're building up that cash pile to kind of get serious and meet those big targets. And that's where tools like Hatch do come in handy. Not that this is a sales pitch, but it is an easy way to start really with low levels of money. With the element of fractional shares means, for a $3 trade, you can make your first investment in the US share market. It's a very, very low barrier to entry, and that also means a really, really low risk barrier. So if you are happy to take, $100 and spend them on shoes, why not take that same $100 and spend them on a company that you really believe in, and start iterating on that over time. So I think that's kind of the point for a lot of people who feel like the barriers are really high, is just change the way you think about it, start early, and by the time you've got the money behind you to get really serious about it, you've kind of learnt what you do and don't do.
Cool. Well said. Well said. Any more to add, Natalie? I feel like a minute isn't really long enough.
1 minute.
Maybe we should make it 2 minutes.
I was going to bring up a stopwatch.
Cool. Now, being self-employed, actually, I wouldn't mind knowing this. How many in this room are actually currently independent earners or self-employed contractors? So a decent chunk of you, right? Okay, so you know what it's like. You've kind of taken the red pill, right? You've gone to the other side, and you know what it's like. It's hard. It's freeing. It's cool, but there's challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is having a regular, lumpy income. Yeah, lumpy, definitely lumpy. And this is where I want to, I guess, hone in on you, James, a little bit, because of what Hnry does. Hnry with no H, no E, Hnry. Kind of tying into what we just talked about with Natalie, and starting with the KiwiSaver bit. Hey, here's another thing on top of KiwiSaver. Contribute regularly towards Hatch. All fine and dandy, but my income isn't regular. So how do I do something that is regular when one of my main inputs is irregular? So how do we do that?
Well, I think just reflecting on what the guys are talking about, one of the things that I've always found is that if you set up those habits and you get into a regular pattern of doing those small little things, and whether that's putting into KiwiSaver, putting into platforms like Hatch, being able to do that regularly kind of starts you off on the right foot. And maybe the contribution is really small to start off with, but actually being able to play with that, and if I may, one of the examples that we have from a lot of financial advisors we talk to, if you go to a financial advisor, they will probably talk to you about looking at your income in percentage terms and saying, well, where are you allocating things? There's probably sort of a certain percentage of your income that's committed expenditure, and then there's a certain percentage that you might want to put away for a rainy day or for your safety net. And then the rest that you're playing with, being able to allocate out a percentage of that and say, well, this is the amount that I'm going to put into the US share market, or this is the amount that I'm going to put aside for my future, is a habit that's worth getting into. And what you find is, what we see in Hnry, where we allow people to actually set that percentage. So every time you get paid, you're setting a percentage to go to, whether it's your utilities or your investments. What we see is that people start with a percentage of 5% when they're earning a certain hourly rate or a certain monthly rate as an independent earner. And as their income increases, naturally, as it does over time, when you drop away all that financial admin for a start, but as soon as that increases, you're actually putting away slightly more of your earnings, but in percentage terms, it's still the same percentage. So thinking about your financial habits in terms of percentages of your overall income is a really neat way to get away from what the banks always have you do, which is essentially putting a fixed price. Oh, I put away $100 a month. But maybe you can afford more than $100 a month because your income has increased. So actually thinking in percentage terms is a really smart way to continue that habit as you start to grow your income. And means that actually, I always find once the money's gone, you don't think about it. Back to that thing at the bank, I had an experience the other day where I think part of our mortgage came up for renewal, and the person phoned me, the mortgage broker, and said, did you want to leave your repayments the same, or did you want to bring your payments down? So I said, well, leave the repayments the same, because then I can pay it off at a faster rate. Because once it's gone, it's off your plate from a financial perspective, and you know what you're left with. And so you know that what's in your pocket is yours to keep, and you can actually go and, that's your money that is there to spend, rather than thinking, oh, I wish I'd put that away, or I wish I'd kind of invested that somewhere.
That's good. Because most of us would like to think that we've got the discipline to do the right thing, but having it happen automatically is actually really good. Really, really awesome. So allocations, that's what you call that, right?
Yeah, we call it allocation. We couldn't think of a word, so allocations was the closest thing we could come to. It's like, no more. What I hated as a contractor was the idea that direct debits on the 20th of the month. That's the worst, because when clients didn't pay by the 20th, you can't make that payment out of your bank account. Like when you've got, whether it's lumpy, whatever you want to call it, slightly more inconsistent income patterns, direct debits just don't work for the self-employed. It just doesn't work like that. You don't have a payday. You potentially are working for a bunch of different clients that might have different pay cycles. So you want to allow people to pay into investments as a percentage of their income when they get paid, not just on an arbitrary day of the month. And that's about, again, empowering self-employed people to be able to operate in a way that allows them to invest for their future.
Awesome. Because like it or not, right? Like the whole system's been designed for PAYE, really, everywhere you go. And so you kind of have to synthesize that or create that. And the Hnry, I think you used the term before we were talking, financial sidekick. Yeah. I prefer Marie Kondo, but financial sidekick works.
The first time it's gone to Marie Kondo, but that's fine.
My favorite at the moment. So, yeah, that's cool. Okay, well, let's actually go to the audience and use Slido here. This is a where was it here? This is one actually again for you, James, if you don't mind if I do two in one go here.
Fine. I'll drink in a minute.
So, any advantages to being a company versus a sole trader?
Good question. So when I first started out contracting about 4 years ago, I made the classic mistake of going out and registering myself as a company. And if I'm really honest, I just wanted business cards. And for some reason, I thought that having a company was like, that was the way you get business cards. Pretty naive. But what I basically did was like doubled my admin burden overnight. Not only did I have to pay to maintain the company, I had to file tax returns for the company, but I also had to do the tax returns for myself as an individual. And when I did some digging and looked into it, there's actually, what we say to people is if you have staff and you're hiring people and you have creditors and inventory and you have a business that it is sort of operating as such, go and get a registered business, go down that road, go and sit and use Xero. It is, it's great for when you've got a small business. But if you're an independent earner, Xero is overkill. It's, I found myself reconciling transactions like a zombie. I was in the inventory section of Xero selling myself in quantities of me. Because it's like, you buy software, you're like, oh, I've got to use all these things. But I didn't need any of that stuff. I was actually just on an independent earner. I was invoicing a couple of clients. I didn't have anything crazy like staff or inventory. And what I realized was that by having a company, I wasn't saving myself anything in tax. When you take money out of the company, the tax rates are the same for you as an individual as you would be if you just earned the money directly. But, unless you have some serious liability to protect yourself against, if you're a BA or a project manager or, you're not out there racking up creditors around town, the company structure ironically, is something that you know, you'll find a lot of accounting professionals will push you into, because surprise, surprise, they work on time and materials. So the more complex you are, the more they can charge you. Whereas actually, when you want simplicity and you're just an individual, you can get all the benefits of being a company. You can register for GST, you can claim business expenses, claim a portion of your home office. But what you don't have to do is company tax returns, profit and loss, you know, all of that extra burden that you've just kind of taken on, like I did. And then you've got to unwind yourself from it. And if anyone's had to unwind themselves from a company that charges GST when you're a sole director, it's painful.
Cool. It's good, eh? I told you it was smart. Oh, look, we got an applause.
Thank you for the pity applause.
That was good. Good job. Cool.
Tom, could I ask James a question really quick? I want to know how those allocations work. Does it happen as soon as someone gets paid, or is there a little bit of time?
Straight away. So when you get paid, literally within a couple of minutes, it's already got dispatched out to wherever you're sending it to. So for us, for context, we process thousands and thousands of transactions every day. So as soon as money comes in, it goes straight back out again. So couldn't help give a shout out to ASB, who are our banking partner, even though I'm in a Westpac building. But but it goes out straight away. So basically, you can see that appear in whether it's your tax accounts or whether it's your investment accounts. That gets there straight away.
The reason why I ask is, you know, Sorted is all about personal finance, but if I think about the most important message to get across to people about personal finance, it's pay yourself first. And you know, this is a classic example of how that works. But it's why the tax system works. It's why KiwiSaver works for PAYE. You know, and you've invented a system that helps people, you know, contractors, independent earners do that. So it automates one of the best things you can possibly do with your personal finances. So.
Can you keep going with that, Tom? Like,
Yeah,
pay yourself
sure.
first. That was actually one of the questions I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit more. Can you just expand on?
So that, you know, when we're talking about people saving a safety net, it's not just about the safety net. It's putting in habits of paying yourself first, getting people used to this idea, because a lot of people try to save. They get paid and then they pay all their bills, they pay every single other person, they try to get to the next payday and then see if there's anything left over and try to save that, and guess what? There's never anything left over. So the technique you have to use is basically taxing yourself. You basically have to figure out, even if it's a very small amount, if it's just $10 each time you're paid, you automate that, and little by little, I mean, to be honest, this is why my kids have pocket money. Is because I pay myself first. I pay them, you know, when I get paid automatically, you know, $5 at a time, and then they always have pocket money. You know, it's just that same concept.
Cool.
And it turns out that most of the financial goals you have can be achieved using pay yourself first. Like if you're saving for a house deposit, you can basically set up that goal, make sure you pay yourself first into. You can't pay yourself too much first, right? This is a classic mistake I made since we're the first time I tried paying myself first, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to pay myself you know, $1,000 right away when I was paid. I wasn't paid that much, you know, so I gave it a try, and of course, no, that didn't work. I started rating it right away. So how much you have to figure out where you're at, but you know, that's the value of having a bit of a plan for your income, some sort of budget and that sort of thing. You figure out how much can you pay yourself first, how much is going to go towards this, how much is going to go towards that, and that's precisely what you're facilitating here by setting up allocations.
And being a percentage based, again, takes care of the lumps, right?
Yeah.
No more APs or direct, you know, actually set amounts. That's percentage. Cool.
The more automated it can be, the better too. Like you could do it yourself every time, but again, my kids would not get their pocket money on any regular basis if I didn't automate it, because I've got lots of other things to think about.
Yeah. Cool. Now this one for you. So someone asks here, by the name of Anonymous, what is a good strategy when starting out in shares if you don't immediately have a lump sum to invest?
Well, I suppose we've just talked about it a little bit, but I can go back to my history. The way I started, and it was a lot harder before tools like Hatch existed, is to in my case, I just went, I don't care about the fees. The fees is, in Hatch's case, $3, it's buying a coffee. Like I get that if as a percentage of $100, it's high. In context of what I spend my money on, very low. So I just kind of went, wipe those out of my head to start. And then the second thing is, I think a lot of people worry about the educational side and getting a lot of research under their belts before they start. I took the opposite approach and went, I could pay a fortune to go to university to learn this, or to do a whole bunch of courses, or to buy books, or I could just learn by doing and accept that some of the original losses, which might be like $50 on $100 on a really bad day, is cheap education. So I kind of just removed some of those, I suppose, psychological barriers from my head to get started. And then, I mean, in my opinion, the best approach is to just start. I think the other thing people worry about is what to invest in. And once again, my approach was to pick companies at the time that I knew really well, that I bought the products from, and my friends bought the products from, and so that for me felt like, well, I'm buying them, my friends are buying them, they'll probably be around tomorrow, and I can...
How's those Tesla shares going out for you?
They are up 79%, thank you very much. And they're going larger, I'm sure. It's still back Tesla. But that's the thing, is I really like, and I think the other thing is the long-term vision. I think it's really, really easy when you are new to it to respond to every little reaction in the market. And my mantra has always been have a plan, and I don't even write my plan down, but my plan is I'm buying Tesla, and I'm buying Tesla for 20 years. So even when it's up 79% and I'm up going, oh, I could make so much money right now, I just ignore that because I know my plan was to keep it. And on the reverse is also true. Quite often the markets do dip, and you put some money in something and it's feeling quite scary. I encourage you to do what I do and reverse your thinking on that and actually put more money in, because it's kind of on sale when the price is down if you're in there for 20 years. So, I mean, to me, it's most of the barriers to getting started are actually emotional, because it's all the kind of fears we have, loss aversion versus trying to do better, and you just kind of have to sit down and kind of walk through them one by one with yourself, and start small and learn as you go.
That's good. Set goals, allocate into your hash
allocations.
account,
I mean, like, I'm one of those idiots who got trapped by multiple accountants into having 0 accounts, and I've got trusts and companies coming out my ears. James is working with me. I'm like, do you do like private consulting? But like, if I had this stuff when I first set out 15 years ago, my life would be quite different now, because being able to set up that percentage thing, which I kind of had to nut out myself badly a lot of the time, it makes life just so much easier.
I have a question for you, Nat. Within Hatch, so I've got my account within Hatch, and I'm putting money in. Maybe it's coming via Hnry, and it's building up, and I want to buy some more Tesla shares, for example. Is it None of this is advice, of course. Funny. Okay. So if we can allocate automatically via Hnry, can you allocate to a certain purchase, i.e. dollar cost average in, let's say, over 6 months, so regularly contribute a set amount over time, no matter what the price is? Is it possible to do that?
Interesting you asked that.
Really? Okay,
because theoretically, you should be able to, because it's sitting there in testing right now.
Is that right?
And it's being pushed back. So that's one of the things, and that's one of the, like I talked about earlier, that we've identified all these different groups and people who have all these different barriers, and that is one of them for a lot of people, is especially when everyone invests emotionally. Like, when you actually look at all the research, most of us, that is the biggest barrier to doing well in investing, is our emotions. So anything we can do to help people kind of set up their strategy, make their plan, and then set and forget it, we're very much behind. So yeah, we are just about to release in the next, I'm looking at our development team, couple of weeks, the ability to set it up. You can pick which shares, that can be individual companies or some of the exchange-traded funds, all of the exchange-traded funds, and then you can pick your time frame and your amount, and we've made it really easy, so especially for self-employed people, if you don't have the amount of money in your account that month or that 3 months or that fortnight you've set up, all it does is just skip that payment and waits for the next time. So it means that, you can set and forget.
That's cool. Awesome.
Watch
cool?
this space.
Yeah, like it's you see a problem,
and
then you just figure out how to solve it. That's awesome. Yeah, setting the bar pretty high though, because now it's like, well, what are you gonna do next, right? What's your next trick?
There's about 5 other things coming through
right?
testing right now.
That's cool.
We don't sleep.
No. Well, they're taking a break right now. So
Drinking a lot as well.
You may have noticed they ran in the door at,
That's the coping
6:30?
mechanism. Yeah, that's true. So here we go. I've got a question from someone who asks, This is a question for you, James. What does Hnry cost compared to an accountant? And in brackets, no, I don't work for Hnry.
Well, your accountant, it's going to cost you anywhere, and honestly, we hear all the horror stories. You could have a mate do it for you for $500, but we've heard, I think, Alan, just not to pick on you, but I think, didn't you say you came across a hairdresser who was being charged $5,000 for their accounts as a sole trader? And honestly, it's like the Wild West out there. It's, it totally depends who you go to. There are some reputable ones, there are some not very reputable ones. And for us, I was always really annoyed at the end of the year when, and this is a friend of mine was my accountant, where I'd been using Xero all year, diligently reconciling, and at the end of the year he would print off Xero and hand it to me and say, "Is this right?" I'd be like, "What?" And he went, "Well, you have to sign here to say that this is all accurate." And I was like, "Okay." And then he goes, "That'd be $1,700, please." You're like, "Well, hang on a minute, I did all the work, and I'm paying you, and I'm paying for Xero." And he's like, "Uh-huh." I was like, so for me, when we started Hnry, the whole idea was that, it's got to work for self-employed people. It's got to be pay as you go. It's got to be, well, the thing I hate about subscriptions, if anyone's joined a gym, gone twice, and then never gone for 6 months, and looked at that money coming out of your bank account every month going, "I'm going to cancel that," when I finally built up the guts to go back into the gym to cancel it. And that really annoyed us. So for us, the cost of Hnry is just 1%. Every time you get paid, it's 1% of that money that gets paid into your Hnry account. And for that, you get the entire service. So unlimited use of it. We don't charge you for phone calls. We've got a team of experts that are on hand to help you. We don't start a stopwatch every time you phone and then bill you later. It's a fair and equitable platform, whether you're earning, sort of 30 grand a year or like 200 grand a year. It's absolutely fair. And we even cap the fees, so if you earn more than $200,000 a year, you never pay more than $2,000. So for us, that's what's helped us become kind of New Zealand's fastest growing tax agency, is actually offering a fair service for Kiwis who, otherwise would have been out on the open market being charged God knows what by an accountant who does basically about a third of the work that we do for you.
For James, as someone in this position, what is the situation for, I suppose we sort of make the assumption that everyone's new to contracting and they'll just sign up blank slate to Hnry. What about people in my position?
The problem children. No, one of the great things is that actually we spend a lot of our time with people who are midway through the financial year. So it's really actually quite easy to switch, and if you do need to, if you've got 17 trusts and 5 partnerships and whatever else you've been set up with, the great thing is that, as tax agents, we can help unwind all that stuff for you. So for us, that's just part of the service, is to make your life simple. So if you imagine, all of that stuff where, sneak preview, Ben and I were talking, our marketing guy were talking earlier about something we might do next year that's called the Break Up With Your Accountant Tour, where we will actually break up with your accountant for you. If you've got a bad relationship with your accountant, we will, as a tax agent, we have the power to break up with your accountant, and we will do that for you. We'll unwind all of your mess, and we'll make your life simple, and that comes at no extra charge. So it's, for us, it's about, if you want to have your life simplified in your contracting, that's what we do, and that's just part of the service.
That's cool. I like that. And that's another good tagline, right? Break up with your accountant. People often come to me to break up with their bank, so it's true. Like that is one of the things that it's a bit of friction, right, to stop people moving forward. So
apparently, you're more likely to get divorced than you are to change banks.
Wow.
Sorry, Darcy.
Is that right? That's right. That's cool.
Now,
Now,
smart investor tool where you can compare all KiwiSaver funds here in New Zealand, all managed funds, share and bond offers. We've wrapped a lot of education in that area to understand what data is available, but also why it's important and why it's there. So really important for us. Actually, I was glad we started to talk about getting strategic about investing, because that's precisely what Sorted is there for. So a tool like Smart Investor will really help you think about your investment mix. We've got another one on the main Sorted website called the Investor Kickstarter, because investing in shares, great, but strategically, you're probably not looking for your entire portfolio to be shares. So what should be the mix, what mix is right for you. And so that Kickstarter tool will just have you answer a few questions, and then you start to get an idea of what type of investor you are, what a mix for you might be appropriate, and then you go shopping for shares. If you figure out that you're a balanced investor and that you're looking for half of your portfolio to be shares, and then you can go shopping. But before that, you really want to figure out a few different things about why you're investing.
Yeah, and I guess even before you're even able to invest, you kind of need to get a handle on your own cash flow. So one of the questions that somebody asked was around, I guess, tax provisioning, or what to do with the money that you know that you need to pay. So you let's say, for example, you're setting aside money for GST, or maybe it's a provisional tax payment. Yeah, is that better for you, James? Or?
Oh, go on then. I was going to let Nat answer the tax questions, but so don't spend your tax money on a new iPhone. I did that. That was not smart. But I made, my accountant friend, and I'm so rude about Gareth. He's one of the guys I play hockey with, but he's my accountant, or was. And man, in a big way. Yeah, we got thrown. Story for a different time. We actually got thrown out of their offices because we walked in and we wanted them to do the books for us as a company, and we told them what we were about to do, and they said, "Get out." And it was great, and I loved it. And it was I tell everybody. But yeah, they're now one of our partners. Funnily enough, they kind of came around to what we do. But when I spoke to Gareth, and he did what I'm sure a lot of people's accountants tell them, which is, go and put 33% into an account and just leave it there and don't touch it. And you get like a high interest account, or high interest, where the interest is terrible these days. The interest rates are so low. So I found myself doing this like great shuffle, where money would come in, I'd put 33% into this random account, and I didn't make any interest on it, and then I had to make tax payments, like provisional tax payments or GST tax payments, and I had to make them so regularly that I was losing all my bonus interest, and I didn't actually make anything off the money, and yet I was sitting there, shuffling money between different bank accounts, kind of going, oh, well, look, I've just made $20 there, but I was on the sort of $80 an hour, $90 an hour as a contractor, and I was just obliterating all of my time by kind of wasting it for kind of a tiny return. So, one thing that we always say to people is, if you're going to go down the route that you're not going to use Hnry and have all that stuff taken care of, like down to the dollar of exactly what your taxes are going to be, if you put money away, just put it away and don't touch it. Just literally, put it in that bank branch that you have to go down to the branch and take it out. Because the chances are, 33% is too high for the vast majority of people. My annoyance and why we started Hnry is because I never knew what money was mine. I had that 33% sat there. And I've got a family. I've got 2 young girls. I quite like to make sure that I can go out and do nice stuff with them. But 33% of my income just sat in an account. And at the end of the year, or whenever it was, I paid some tax bills, and I kept looking at that account, going, how much of that is actually mine? How much is ACC? How much is GST? I just don't genuinely know. So part of Hnry is literally you just get rid of that money, and it's the exact right amount. So we dynamically adjust your income tax rate throughout the year, because 33% is too high for the majority of people. And you pay exactly the right amount of tax, and what you get in your pocket, you can go and spend on the family. You can go and know what's yours, rather than do what I did, which is making that mistake. I went and bought an iPhone, because I saw that money there, and I was like, well, I'll pay that back. And then I never did, and the tax bill came, and then you have to set up a payment plan with IRD, because iPhones are expensive. So, part of the annoyance, and when it comes to provisional tax, is just that whole system is just backward as anything. And anyone who's made provisional tax payments will tell you that whole thing's just got to go.
Amen.
Yeah, you're there with me. Like, there's nothing worse than provisional tax payments. And so, like, for us, it's about, as soon as you sign up, we get rid of those payments for good. And all you need to do is pay the exact right amount of tax using Hnry. We do that for you automatically. And just go back and enjoy your life. And just, if I have to hear the words, well, I do. It's ironic that I started a business that takes care of other people's tax, but I just can't stand it. Provisional tax, terminal tax, God, just no. No.
Give him a clap. Come on.
I am not an accountant. Someone once introduced me as an accountant, and I cried.
Yes. Well, that's like, here's another question. Do you enjoy breaking up bad accounting relationships?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. If you're not having a good time, I will call your accountant. I'll email your accountant, because it's about time that. I remember talking to one of the big 4 accountancies and actually joked that we'd found that a lot of people were being overcomplicated, and we suspected that that was because it got the accountants more money. And the guy, fancy suit, I was in my shorts as usual. I dressed up for tonight. And he just looked at me and he shrugged and he was like, yeah. I was like, what? Yeah, so you're deliberately overcomplicating people? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. I genuinely thought that was a joke. I was like expecting him to go, oh, I know, blah, blah, blah. But no, seriously, sorry, that's you, Nat, right? It's the 17 trusts. It is a wild west of an industry. So if anyone wants me to break up with their accountant, I will do that tomorrow. I have business cards. Like, honestly, that's the most fun I have is talking to accountants like that.
And actually, just on this, just to clarify, I'm hearing this, and you're totally selling me on it, right? I can't use it though because I've got a company, right?
You've got a business.
So is there plans for Hnry to move into that space where you could help someone like myself?
Do you have staff? Yeah, so that's the problem. We're very big believers in if you've got a business and you're running an actual business with staff, accounting software is great. Like, we use Xero internally as a business. I can't say a bad word about it. Like, if you're actually running a business, it's great, and you might want to have that level of complexity, but we've got no plans to go into that market. It's not a market that we really want to play in. For us, it's about the individual. It's kind of about making things simple for the individual and getting some equality back in that employment market. 15 to 20% of people are earning money independently in the workforce, and at the moment they don't have a set of tools. They don't have things that make it easy for them. So, I think small business is kind of covered, but we're all about the individual.
Cool. I've got tons of other questions for you, James, but I gotta shut it down because it's just too good. And they're funny. This is a good one. Are you gonna back the movie Breaker Uppers 2?
Who's in that? Does anyone know?
I don't know. That's right. That'd be really boring. Okay. Any plans to offer ASX shares? So this will probably be a question for you, I think, Natalie. So, any plans on getting into the ASX, the Australian Stock Exchange?
I'm looking at Kristen. Well, I mean, we obviously have much bigger plans than just offering US share market. I think it's just a matter of when things come out. And obviously, great thing about the US share market is they're probably about 10 years ahead of the NZX and ASX in terms of everything's digital now. So it's pretty easy to connect in with them. So it's just a matter of going through, chatting to people, figuring out how you can actually do that. With the ASX and NZX and figure out dot all our I's, cross all our T's. So no real plans, but it's absolutely something people want. So, and we have built Hatch around what our customers want. So long may that continue. So yeah, can't give any sort of promises because we don't know yet, but we want to.
Cool. Good answer.
Just on a complete tangent.
So I just wanted to ask, I don't know whether it's coming up in the questions, but a lot of people at the moment are really passionate about ethical investing, and it's become sort of a really big topic. And I suppose a question to either of you about, whether it's just opinions or whether it's sort of what you're seeing in the market, just in terms of where particularly Kiwi firms are really getting passionate about ethical investing and really kind of reinvesting wealth back into the country, and just kind of getting your opinion on what you've seen maybe over the last few years in terms of the rise of that.
I'll start, if that's okay. So I suppose I have two comments on that. One is ethical means something different to every single person in this room. And I think one of the things that has become the big PR spin on ethical investing is this idea that just by removing weapons and tobacco, suddenly you've created something that's an ethical fund or an ethical investment. Whereas what we really believe in with Hatch is everyone is unique and we all have our own ethics. And some people's ethics is investing in tobacco if that's what they want to do. But for the vast majority of us, it's we have our own really strong connections to different things, be it the future of biotech, the future of clean energy companies, and even right down to specific types of clean energy companies. I love to talk about companies who are promoting female representation and leadership. And the great thing about having 3,000 different investment options is that you can implement any sort of ethical investment strategy that you have. And your strategy will look quite different from mine, but to me that feels like the biggest thing is to watch out for the what do they call it? Greenwashing. Greenwashing. And actually, recognize that I suppose the second point, is activist investing, which I personally find really fascinating. So I think the traditional approach has been, if I don't like it, I'll ignore it, and that works really well when you're boycotting a company and not buying products from them. But I've heard one example a couple of months ago that I really loved, about a bunch of people who invested in a gun company in America and then turned up at the shareholders meeting and forced them to put controls on their guns so that they couldn't be misused by kindergarteners. And I think there's something really solid to be said there about the types of investing and actually having a say. And when you investing is you become a part owner of a company, which gives you a say in how they run that company. And same with the biggest funds in the world, like 50% of the US share market now is actually owned by the fund providers. So those guys are starting to get some pretty big sway, so you can start to have a bit of an impact there.
So just on Sorted, we're getting very interested in this area because we can see we regularly survey the public, and particularly in that KiwiSaver area, we're seeing that a lot of people just don't want to invest effectively. They want to invest ethically, but as you rightly point out, that can mean a wealth of different things to different people, and we're following it very closely though. And so for the first time, that smart investor tool that we have on Sorted launched in February. It's the first time you can open up a KiwiSaver fund and see the entire holdings, the entire portfolio that's in it. So you can actually see for the first time which companies your money is flowing into. And so that brings up the next question, well, how ethical is this? And one of the reasons why we're kind of getting away from like a generic green label there, because there's so much to it, and we're finding that as we're surveying people, there's even a gender gap, how much interest there is in responsible investing, but we're finding that the interest is really different, whether it's weapons or animal cruelty is very high on the list that people are interested. Fossil fuels, obviously, the whole with climate change, and so we're working towards dialing up the information in that area, so a lot more transparency. But if you haven't come across Mindful Money yet, the new platform here in New Zealand that launched this year has great information exactly how ethical, depending on the criteria that you choose, a fund is. And so we've been in conversations with them, and we're looking to collaborate more in the future so that people can invest ethically but also effectively financially.
That's awesome. And check out Finapster as well. Another way to actually see what's going on in one place. It's like, I think there's something in that though, isn't there? Like there's almost like a sense of voting and influencing as you invest, and it's cool. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if nothing else. But hey, you're doing good. So I've got a question here. Going back to KiwiSaver. So Tom, you might want to have a crack at this one, I guess. And again, none of this is financial advice. We'll say that 1,000 times, and get your own advice on this one. This kind of, I'm saying that because this kind of tinges on that one. You probably should think about this and get maybe another opinion here. But as a business owner, what should I be doing with KiwiSaver? Contributing to a KiwiSaver managed by others, or invest for my retirement outside of KiwiSaver? And so this is probably speaking to, hey, there's not really a lot of benefits when you're self-employed with KiwiSaver, apart from the member. Well, not the tax credit. So
yeah, so that government contribution is the main incentive at the moment, and is actually the main incentive that we've been calling for to actually adjust it in favor of.
That as well? Yeah.
Well, it's an idea. You may have seen it in the media. Right now, the government incentive is you can get up to $521 a year. So that's 50 cents on every dollar you put in. So you need to put in about $1,043 every year, and you can get up to that $521. And I remember for myself, when I started to went from being an employee to self-employed, my contributions to KiwiSaver, just went right down because the incentives to participate weren't really there. So one of the proposals that we're looking at, every 3 years, the Retirement Commissioner reviews retirement income policies in New Zealand and makes recommendations to government about things like KiwiSaver and how to improve it. And so one of the proposals on the table that the Retirement Commissioner is considering is what would happen if that government incentive was instead $2 for every $1 that you put in. So if you, for example, if you put in $1,000 over a year, $2,000 from the government would join that. And would that incentivize enough long-term a long-term savings habit? Because that's fundamentally what we're after.
Just for self-employed people, or for everybody?
So that would be for any voluntary contributions, and so even and many of you may relate to this. So people who have interruptions in their working lives, this incentive would still be available to them. People who are homemakers, for example, and aren't employed. People who are carers for people, their family. This would be for all. But it would particularly work. I mean, when we were thinking about the proposal, it would particularly work for contractors, for independent earners, gig workers, freelancers.
And how can we just make that happen? Apart from like what? How can we all actually make it known that that's actually what we would like to see?
Well, it started off as a proposal, and we floated it in the media, and we started gauging. We could actually do a spot poll right here. Okay, so how many people would that make a difference to your KiwiSaver contributions if the incentive changed?
Sure. There's democracy. Let's just agree it's done.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice if it was that easy?
That would be great.
Cool. And so going back then to the first part before I kind of distracted you in terms of what would I do, or what is the alternative beyond KiwiSaver? Once I've maxed out the benefit, is there really any point, and can you keep on going with KiwiSaver, or should I actually do something outside
so it's
of it?
important to know that KiwiSaver is a type of managed fund, and it's got lots of restrictions around it. So if it fits your goals, and KiwiSaver as a product is best used for a first home or for retirement. But if you're investing for other goals, there are lots of other products out there, and particularly other managed funds. You could have a look on Smart Investor. Again, we're publishing just general data, transparency about fees, about returns, and you'll find that KiwiSaver, if it fits your goals, is a cheaper option than managed funds in general. But you need to shop around, and there's a lot of even ethical investing managed funds these days to choose from. For example, funds that have an orientation just to water companies, for example, as just towards climate change, just towards so you get the impact investing crowd in that area as well. That's cool.
Can I add to that? Of course. I just wanted to touch on the managed funds thing, because I don't know how many people are across all the different types of funds. It's one of those great things that, like accountants, the financial industry makes things super, super complicated. So fundamentally, at a very basic level, there's kind of two types. One is actively invested, which means there's a bunch of experts who are trying to sort of game the market and make investments that are smarter than just how the general market, which is kind of just the general ups and downs of your economy, goes. And the other one they call passively managed, which basically just tracks the market. So you generally end up paying higher fees on an actively managed fund because you're paying for those experts, and that's what the majority of the KiwiSaver funds are. One alternative to that is what's called exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. No one seems to know what they are when you ask them. But basically they are a fund that is traded on a stock exchange, so it's just another way of putting money in rather than giving it to a financial advisor or a fund manager. You buy shares in the fund. And just as a point, in New Zealand there's probably about 30 ETFs listed on the New Zealand share market. We've got about 500 on Hatch, and quite often the ones listed on New Zealand share market are basically, they've just wrapped up the US funds and put them on the New Zealand share market to make it, I suppose, slightly easier to access before Hatch came along. There's a few different fee things in there as well. So I just think that's a really important point to note if you are looking at KiwiSaver versus when you don't get that extra $2 for your $1. The other big benefit of KiwiSaver is it does lock your money away. That's a benefit or a curse depending on who you are. But there are other options when you don't get some of those big benefits, and one of them I would suggest looking at exchange traded funds, because in comparison, when you look at kind of the fees, most managed funds are 0.8 to 1.5% fees. Yeah, whereas a lot of the funds listed on Hatch, you're paying 0.1% fees, 0.2% fees, and that does make a big difference when you've got a ton of money in there over time.
Yeah.
I just think, this is more personal opinion. I'm not. I'm just throwing my 2 cents in. I think the key thing is to, as Tom was saying, that the KiwiSaver is good for a certain type of kind of investment priority. But I think the key is balance, and the key is actually starting to look. A lot of people think that that KiwiSaver can't be really sort of part of a portfolio, or that maybe Hatch isn't part of a portfolio because I don't have a specific broker. It's ridiculous. What you're doing is you're spreading your risk, and I think that's the key thing to note here is that absolutely, if you're planning for retirement and you want to put money away, you want to lock it away, maybe it's for a first house, KiwiSaver is a fantastic option. There's some great providers out there. However, it shouldn't be an either or. KiwiSaver for the self-employed is, until we get these changes through, is pretty woeful. Compared to your permanent member of staff colleagues who are getting kind of employer contributions on top of their KiwiSaver, you have to think as a contractor, as a self-employed person, how do I make my money work harder for me? And KiwiSaver is one option, but there are also other options, and you should actually look to combine a few different options with different risk profiles, because it's about starting to spread that risk and really think about sort of what are the long and medium-term gains that want to be made. And I think for me, what's really exciting is to be in a place where actually that stuff is quite accessible to me. And particularly when I was in the UK and coming into employment, I would not have even considered having an investment portfolio. But what's really exciting is that actually you can have KiwiSaver, you can have ETFs, you can have individual shares, and actually that's something that you can do with $3, $5, whatever that thing is. Those little habits, and it's about feeling as though you're genuinely investing not just in KiwiSaver but in other things as well.
And the main story here is there's no right or wrong way. This
is not financial advice.
This is not. I can keep on saying that. Yeah. Say that like 3 times a day.
Can I just double down on the non-financial advice, but that no either or? And I think a lot of things are phrased these days as you either do KiwiSaver or this, and I think you're bang on. You're like preaching to the converted here, that you should have a range of things, and you shouldn't consider any one of them as an either or.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add to that, essentially what we're after is goal-based investing. So again, what is this money for, and how soon do you need it? Because if you don't know how soon you'll need the money, you really can't make really good investment decisions in terms of what part to go into.
Cool, and we'll just do. Is everybody okay if we do maybe another couple questions? Is that cool? So if you have any other questions, then now's the time to check it out. I'll just choose the best ones, and all the rest of you guys are losers. But there's one question here, which I think is pretty cool, and I've got a hidden motivation here, and I'm fishing for compliments. So, aside from the Hatch Weekly, what other financial content should we be consuming?
Hatch Weekly.
I definitely wouldn't recommend any podcasts. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard of Darcy's podcast, The Everyday Investor, which I was listening to before we have appeared on it. There's really good, because you have and you've probably seen it tonight, Darcy has a very natural way of just kind of having a conversation with people, which is in the world of finance, which is largely very off-putting and scary. It's a really nice way to learn things from a range. I think, did you say we've all been on it? I think, you were coming up. So there's that. We also have done some work with Ruth from the Happy Saver, which is, I think she is an awesome woman living down south in New Zealand. And she talks a lot about kind of your saving and money and wealth building habits. Once again, it's that kind of, I'm not a huge finance person, so like I really go for things that are easy, plain English, having conversations, and she's another big one. Then there's Cooking the Books, which is Frances Cook, and I think, is she affiliated with the Herald? Mm-hmm. Yeah, she once again, it's the same. It's kind of having conversations with people, and she's kind of learning her own stuff about money and having conversations around it.
Again, balanced diet. That's the key thing. That it totally depends, and just like news, get it from a bunch of sources. Go and see what you're interested in. Go and actually explore. The Hatch Weekly, the Sorteds. Go and check out different resources and find a few that you like. But also, what we find, and we talk to a lot of people who maybe are just a bit fed up when it comes to tax and financial admin, and what we find is once people are sort of up and running in our service and they forget about all that tax stuff, that's when they come to us and they go, hey, look, what would you recommend? Now I don't have to worry about GST and income tax and ACC. What can I look at? What are the resources? And we always kind of recommend that people actually just kind of invest the time to go out and find resources that are interesting to them, and go and try a whole bunch of different things. Go and have a look and read a whole wide variety, or listen to a whole wide variety of different sources, because you'll always find that there'll be something that resonates with you, that talks to you in your language. But don't feel like you have to be kind of led by the herd, led by your friends. Actually find someone who talks in your language and subscribe to their content. I think we all have this aversion to subscribing to things these days because we get so much spam. But if you genuinely enjoy reading somebody's content and it's related to your financial well-being, you're far more likely to open that email, read it, even interact with the people. People are so customer-centric these days. We always recommend, if you've got a question for someone who runs a podcast or has a weekly blog or something, get in touch with them. You know, we love it when people get in touch with us because it's like we genuinely like hearing people's ideas. So, yeah, engage, get a balanced diet. Probably Everyday Investor Podcast sorted, Hatch. Like, get on these websites.
Good on you.
Can I say one more thing?
Unlike Henry, we do actually have a list of stuff. Just like I completely agree, balanced diet. I'm not going to start a fight. But we have noticed there's a bunch of people coming to us just saying, I don't know where to start. So if you get in touch, we have just a list of a kind of a range of stuff that all of us have kind of found out from different investors that at least might be a starting point that you can kind of race off. So just hit us up at, I think it's hello@Hatch Invest, and we can give you that list.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I'm going to advocate an independent and an impartial voice, which is what we've, attempted to create. What we are. You really want to watch out for any type of stepping into anyone's sales funnel. Basically, any advice that's linked to a specific product is conflicted the most. What I love about Hatch is what you're doing is you're not funneling people into a specific share investment. You're opening them up to entire markets and to entire options. So it's a really key thing to look at. What is furthering your options? What's giving you a transparency and an independent voice?
Especially with Natalie and you, James, you've found a problem, you've solved the problem, and it's like the toilet, right? It's like you have this amazing sorry. I didn't try to be Let me say that again. So if you get the crap sorted, again, it's too close, isn't it? But if you get those problems taken care of, then it's like things just become better, right? And I suspect, James, with the customers that are using Hnry, you've probably seen, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've probably seen revenue increase because you're solving a lot of these problems that slow people down. The frictions, the thing that act as a bit of a drag, right? And that's got to be a good thing because now people can actually do what's really important, which is to build wealth on top of that.
Yeah, what's really interesting is I think we had to extend our office the other day because we're kind of growing at a bit of a rate, and we had one of our very earliest customers come and say a few words. Ines, who surprisingly actually works for Hatch and has been there for a little while, and she was like customer number 12, and she's been with us for a few years now. And one of the things that we love seeing is when people join us and they're so at sea, they've got all of this financial hassle they're having to deal with. And then they start using our platform, and actually the amount of work they can take on grows. Because for years they've been stopping themselves from taking on more and more work because they can't deal with the financial admin. They can't just have more invoices and more reconciliations. And what's great is actually seeing people take on more and more work and start to see their income grow over time. And at our office warming, Ines complained that she now had too much work on and she had to turn it down. And so her next thing was, can you just do the work for me? You've taken care of the financial hassle. Next step, can you just do that work for me? That would be really great.
There's an app for that, right?
There's an app for that. There's outsourcing. But what's really great is actually kind of giving people the freedom to actually focus in on doing the work, and for us kind of helping people grow. And I think that's one thing I think the three of us all have in common is that we're all here to help individuals grow, whether that's growing kind of wealth or education or being able to grow your business as an independent earner. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing a problem. I'm not going to liken it to the toilet, but there's nothing like seeing a problem, helping to solve it, and then seeing the benefit that people get out of the other side, which can be anything from just getting peace of mind to just getting time back in their lives to actually becoming more prosperous, which is kind of why we're all doing this, I suppose, is about financial wealth, financial inclusion, and there's something really satisfying kind of seeing that benefit in just everyday Kiwis who just want to make things better for themselves and their families.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I think that's been great, right? Would you agree? Yeah. Sweet. Cool. We wanted you guys, just to feel like empowered, want you to feel a little bit relieved that you can actually get started on this. You can do something and educated. You know what the options are. So, thank you guys for coming on, spending the time, for organizing this. That probably wouldn't be cheap to do all this sort of stuff, especially with all that pizza. So
we're claiming full credit for the organization.
That's so rude. We did nothing.
We did nothing. This is just standing around.
Yeah, we just completely ignore the people who did all of the work. But thank you. And if you guys guys have any questions, obviously just hit up all of us for anything that you want to know about. We'll be here answering questions one-on-one, I suspect, for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Give yourselves a clap. Thanks for coming along. Cool. We'll finish it up right there.
You guys.
Sweet.
Thanks.